Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's DCA, the Monday show. We are going to tackle a whole bunch of topics today. First of all, Mando, how are you this fine morning, this afternoon?
Well, the market's not been so good since our last show. We were holding at 69K every single week for many weeks. We've had a little bit lower today. So not good on that front, but everything else in life is good.
Well, a minute ago, timestamp at 65,450 was the price of Bitcoin. Let's see what it's at in an hour. CTO, how are you?
I'm also looking forward to the DCA pump. It hasn't been here this week, but you never know.
Good. Well, we have a very, very detailed agenda today. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. Dominance, stable coins, fiat, the death of DeFi, gaming, liquid staking, and so much more. The agenda is so big, and we're going to make it fit, fast, and furious because the audience likes lots of alpha every minute. So let's go. Let me pop this to the stage and jump into the very first topic. Bitcoin dominance. Is it heading to 60%? This is a topic that I think, Mando, you raised. Does that concern you if it does? And this is the history. Last time we were actually this high, we're talking 2020. And back in 2020, things were a little bit different because there's no really mature DeFi. We'll talk more about DeFi later too. But Mando, 60% a concern? What's going on here?
It's looking more and more likely. This has been a long-term trend here. And obviously that's where a lot of the inflows have happened this cycle. I think largely just because of the market caps, you're really talking about ETH BTC here. And maybe to a lesser extent ETH Sol, but really ETH BTC is the main mover here. And my personal opinion is that we could easily touch 60%. I think for the rest of this cycle, we will be between 50 to 60%. And I think I've been pretty vocal that I think, an altcoin season is going to be more difficult this cycle, just because of where the inflows have come, and also that people have seemingly migrated more towards meme coins for speculation rather than altcoins. And my honest opinion is that the ETH ETF might slightly disappoint, at least in the first few weeks. And I think then we could see an approach towards 60%. But this has been something that a lot of people have faded all the way up, and there's been moments where I thought, this is going to head back south again. But Bitcoin dominance just looks so strong to me. It looks so strong to me. It's difficult to not have Bitcoin as such a large bit of your portfolio, or at least we spoke about it last week. Have anything that you think is going to outperform it for too long, because this is just where the rally. This is where all the inflows have been, and it's just this chart. I mean, it's just impossible to fade. It looks like.
But there's two things. You mentioned the ETH. So historically, ETH dominance is always around 20%. Now it's like 17 or something. So that has a big impact on this chart. But also stablecoin dominance is way higher. So when you have so much consumption by the stablecoins, and then you have the massive inflow of 10,000 memes a week, how can it even go above 60 mathematically? Unless, of course, crypto market cap doesn't add in all of the memes. Of course, it doesn't, as we know. But how would you counter argue that?
That's a good point. So I would say that this is more in a world where stablecoins don't go absolutely bananas, and there is points that over the next few months that could easily happen. You've seen Tether move into different chains very recently, and I think Tether's market cap is sitting around 120, 130 billion now, something around that. It's been bouncing around. Yeah, it's tough. That one's the one unknown. I would say X stable coins. I think it could be an up only period for a while. Just because I think it probably continues to outperform ETH this cycle. But I think with stable coins, I agree. That's the one unknown I put into that factor.
Okay, CTO, what does the chart tell you?
So I do have some strong opinions here, actually. So just as Mando said, the chart here, the market cap BTC dominance, including the stable coins, it looks very strong here, and it has been strong all the way since 2020, beginning of 2023. The only point where there was a brief downtrend in this chart, it was actually a flag, which is a bullish pattern. So even the downtrend was bullish, and then it quickly turned back up again. I had resistance in this chart at this point, at 57.2, and it hit it. It hit that resistance almost perfectly in mid-April this year. And since then, it has backed up a little bit, but as everyone can see, this one has not started looking like this. That's how the alt seasons previously have typically looked. It has been like a falling off a cliff type charts, and we don't see anything like that. Instead, price is consolidating below resistance. And looking at the Bitcoin dominance, excluding the stable coins, it's kind of even stronger almost. Like price
Wow,
is,
yeah, look at that.
yeah, price is held back by the resistance. This resistance level is 59%. And you see it clearly, it was support here, then it turned resistance. And you see how many times it has bumped up against that, and it just won't go down. It doesn't start looking like this. That would be an alt season. But instead of that, we're getting more and more bumps up against resistance. So it's very clear this market is still Bitcoin led. Of course, Ethereum is a big part of this index because of the large market cap, and it has performed so poorly, and that's a big part of the explanation. So in a way, you could argue that it's like an isolated case of one project not doing so well. But even so, you know, altcoins are not in the lead. Bitcoin is in the lead still in this market. And if things are getting rougher, I don't think that will change either. In that case, I think it could be even more Bitcoin as like the safer choice, or, you know, the safest of the bunch. So we don't have alt season. I would have loved that we have like a full out alt season where 50, 60, 70% of the altcoins go in uptrend, and the best ones go up 10x, 50x, 100x. But we haven't had that for the entire of 2023 and now half of 2024. Will we ever get it? Who knows?
And wrapping up on that, though, alt season comes way later in the cycle. We're still in the capitulation period post-halving, which lasts 90 days. The miners are just beginning to sell their bags real hard right now. So historically speaking, we have a long way to go before altcoin season even kicks in. Correct? Yeah, Mando?
I think that's fair. I do think it's interesting, just as over the course of my time in crypto, the narrative for Bitcoin and digital gold seems, I mean, there was a period for last year with ETH going deflationary and the talk of ultrasound money that we perhaps, you know, you'd have a even better product than digital gold, and that it'd be deflationary. But now that it's gone back inflationary, unless we see massive scaling of L2s, it probably remains inflationary for the foreseeable future. It does feel like it has now this unique selling point. It's almost like looking at it versus other crypto can put you in a tough spot, because the others are all trying to compete each other on smart contracts, on use, on utility, more like digital oil or more like money, to be fair. And there seems to be a lot more competition in that group, whereas Bitcoin, you know, when you speak to people about it and why people are buying it just seems very different often to why other people are buying other crypto coins. You know, like it just doesn't really seem to have the same sort of narrative around it, and it doesn't feel like that's going to be threatened. There was a period where ETH looked like it could threaten even that narrative. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is just going to be a long-term thing. Like, are we sitting here and we're really going to be having Bitcoin dominance could be an up-only thing for longer than just this cycle? I don't. That remains a question mark for me.
Well, we have some breaking news, which we have to tackle live because sometimes things break. And shout out to the person in the audience that mentioned this, but the head of crypto enforcement at the SNC just resigned. And we know a lot of people have been leaving and quitting, but that's good for crypto. It's bad for Gary Gensler and his team. People no longer want to be associated with this. It gives them, it kind of just stinks bad. CTO, Mando, are you guys aware of this? It just broke a minute ago. Of course, XRP is pumping because, as I always say, if XRP is not a security, I don't know what crypto is.
Yeah. I did see this as we went live. There's actually another story that's gone live, which I think is a joke, but Binance reported it, that he's joined Pump.fun. Like Binance reported that this guy has joined Pump.fun, which is the meme coin launchpad. I don't think that bit of the story is true, but who knows? But yeah, there was those news over the weekend that after Terraform Labs, which is Terra Luna, they did a $4.5 billion fine to the SEC last week, and Ripple, I think, are facing a just shy of $1 billion fine, and they're saying, you can't find us nearly $1 billion if you find Terra $4.5 billion, and there's going to be a bit of back and forth then. But I would be unsurprised. There's been a lot of people leaving the SEC right now. I think people recognize that Gensler hasn't really had a great period here fighting against crypto, and it's a long battle, long arduous battle even for the SEC. So yeah, this seems like a normal thing to have happen. They're going to have a lot of attrition.
Okay, let's get back on the agenda. This is a cool little chart here I kicked over to you guys this morning. It's relative on-chain transaction value in dollar terms globally. And it tells you a couple of things. It ties back into what we discussed regarding the alt season. So first of all, stablecoins are becoming more and more dominant as time goes on, at least in terms of on-chain transaction volume. Bitcoin rebounding a little bit off the bottom. ETH hanging in there, but not too much. And then you have the other L1s. And it varies. We know that other L1s are doing a lot, but for example, Solana is doing the most transactions for stablecoins, but they're very small transactions, like $5 transfers, $10 transfers, whereas ETH moves 100 grand, 200 grand a lot of the time. But how do you interpret this, CTO, this chart? What does this tell you, especially in terms of maybe how it would change if there was an alt season?
I mean, stable coins are very useful for many use cases, both for speculators who want to sell into something stable. You can't really, also, if you want to preserve your dollar value, you can't sell from altcoin to Bitcoin because they're perfectly correlated in dollar terms. So, and I think also stable coins have held up. There was a lot of risk with Tether, is it backed, is it not backed? I think people worry a lot less now. And USDC and so on, more regulated. We got more trust in the stable coins. So that also increased their usefulness. And also for other activities, I don't know, payments and so on, stable coins are very useful. And with fees coming down, it's like cheaper to send them, and they're fast. And they're really a great payment alternative, maybe a better payment alternative than, say, Bitcoin in terms of transaction fee, value stability for a transaction, and so on. We have to remember that much of business runs on very low margin. So if there's suddenly 5-10% volatility, perhaps that's the entire margin of the business. So I'm not surprised to see this. I think that stable coins can become one of crypto's best products.
Yeah. And Mando, how do you interpret this? And as Chaotic Coder says, isn't it a function of trading pairs driving a lot of this?
Yeah, that's a good point. You made a good point before, which is about Bitcoin dominance really being affected by stables. I think stable coins arguably will be one of, if not the most successful in terms of volume thing to come out of crypto. So I imagine stables could creep up and be even bigger part of this. I think obviously you can see it really gain ground during the bear market, and then seemingly has rebounded slightly during the bull. Everything else has started to see more volume. But yeah, I do think that stables, if you just take a step back, like when TradFi comes into this space, I think a lot of it will just be for transfers. It'll just be for payment transfers, for commerce or for finance, or just for day-to-day transfers between people. And I think a large bit of that will be stables. That's not bearish for everything else, in my opinion, but it points to the idea that I don't think crypto is going to fully replace for a lot of people fiat currency. It's really just going to provide the rails for them to use it slightly better, and the people who are fully red pilled are going to be fully using decentralized stores of value.
Now, I would argue that those that don't have a lot of money but have to do micropayments, they are embracing crypto as a matter of survival, and we're already seeing that adoption happening. There's even people using crypto for these micropayments without knowing they're actually using a blockchain. They just found out how to do it on a mobile device. So I think it's big. And then there's another angle to this whole story, and this was in the Wall Street Journal. It's an opinion of how stable coins could stave off a US debt crisis because, with BRICS and the Chinese dumping treasuries, etc., the US dollar needs somebody to demand it. And one of the biggest buyers, I don't know if Tether buys 5 or 8% of all treasuries, but it's a very big percentage. The other guy that buys them all is Warren Buffett. If you add those two together, you get 12 to 15%, which is bonkers to think about. But what about this theory that the US and the Fed actually need stablecoins to keep the dollar afloat?
I love this. I absolutely love seeing an article like this by Paul Ryan. If that's the same Paul Ryan, he's obviously, obviously a well-known US politician. This is what I've been saying for so long. Like, the US needs dollars. We spoke about last week the end of the petrodollar between the US and Saudi Arabia. This is a way to export dollar power almost instantly to pretty much any country around the world. There was a report last week, I don't know if we spoke about it, that Turkey, it's like 4% of their GDP is being used to buy stable coins right now. I bet you the majority of that will be dollars. Now,
it's mildly shocking that other countries haven't realized this. Why do you guys think that it's such an obvious? Everyone in the US, they're focusing on the petrodollar and so on. Why is Europe, I don't know, China, India, why are they not aggressively trying to position their stable coin in this?
Well, I think they have tried. I think a few of them, I mean, China's tried or attempting to go down the route of a CBDC, as are many of these other geographies. But I think part of it's a lack of understanding and just a lack of foresight and understanding of how the world works. But if you're sitting there, and I don't say that the US and Turkey see eye to eye on many things, but they could also very easily in other scenarios be enemies on certain things. You could do this with Russia. You could do this with many of the US's like current, let's say, enemies, and a lot of them will be using part of their currency and converting them to dollar stable coins right now. That is an indirect form of dollar power against these countries, which I just think is wild. Like Venezuela, Ukraine, Turkey, Russia, all of these places were huge users of stablecoins, and not all of these are friends of the US. And I think that is something that is only starting to become more clear when they're starting to see the reliance of even the US's enemies or of their day-to-day retail users of these stablecoins. Surely it's going to become obvious that this is going to be a good way for them to control the world, but also help their own debt crisis. Like, the US needs people to buy dollars. They need people to buy dollar debt for sure.
Yeah,
it's sorry.
I was going to answer your question, CTO. Why is, for example, Euro not doing it? And there is a complex mechanism between the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, and the euro dollar market. And they don't want to implode that very lucrative trade or position or business that they have going on. I don't quite understand how it's all related. I tried digging into it once, but it's extremely complicated to understand exactly the mechanics of how the BIS works. But that could be part of it. What do you guys think about that theory?
I think that this has happened by accident. I don't think anyone has planned it, but thinking about it now, I think US policymakers and strategists will suddenly realize that crypto that they hated so much, it actually brought them a huge international leverage here. And they will realize, but wait a minute, guys, this is actually pretty good. Maybe we shouldn't be so against it, because suddenly the US through the US dollar got a lot of dominance over this stablecoin segment. Suddenly everyone is using US dollar, and the others haven't done anything because they didn't realize the importance. I don't think EU or anyone, I don't think anyone has sat and had a strategic meeting about how to position the euro stablecoin on the global market. I don't think it has happened.
Yeah, I think it's happened by accident. I agree. I think that's my general sense of it, is that it happened by accident, and then people are only now starting to realize how useful this could be. If we all think that stablecoin dominance could head towards, let's say, $1 trillion, that's a lot of dollar power. Again, dollar power, and also another buyer of US debt, which they need. 100% they need.
Okay, let's switch gears because we got a lot of agenda to get through today. This is the top question I get peppered with, and we know all about borrowing against Bitcoin and how in the last cycle it was full of scammers and thieves and nasty individuals. But people, they do need lifestyle chips. You know that term, Mando, from our friend Raul. What is your stance today on borrowing against Bitcoin? Is it still extremely high risk, or what happens if you need money for some medical bills, or you need a new car to be able to commute 50 miles to work every day, or something like that? CT, I'll give this to you first. Do you know of any good avenues? I know you've worked with Rune in the past and other names, but what would you advise here on how people can borrow against their assets?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this because, of course, I liked the idea, but then it turned out that almost all the players that was offering the services, great companies like Voyager Digital, Celsius Network, BlockFi, and so on, turned out that the 10% or so yield setup wasn't particularly good, and people who had lent out their Bitcoin, it wasn't really good setup in the end. Like the risk of a fatal catastrophe turned out to be more than the 10% that you got back in a year. I like to think, when thinking about staking or thinking about borrowing, that's one way to kind of think about it. What is the risk that something goes, that the impossible happens in a year? What's the risk of that? And yeah, I don't do it at this point. Of course, there are other companies and the decentralized solutions which carry other problems. Maybe it's transparent on the blockchain, so it's other problems, but perhaps something could go wrong. Perhaps they could get hacked. Perhaps there's an accidental mistake, or there's an intentional mistake as some of those other ones. So I don't do this. I would love for there to be a solution. I'm just not sure what it is, if it exists today. So selling some of the Bitcoin to pay the bill is perhaps a better solution, and increasing the leverage on the other one from 1 to 1.1 or something like that is perhaps a lower risk solution.
But that has the high opportunity cost, especially if you have to pay taxes, especially short-term capital gains. Now, Mando, you know the infinite money glitch for the rich is borrowing against your assets, writing off interest you pay on borrowing against your assets, and never paying capital gains, holding on to them forever, like a city block in New York City since the 1800s. What's your take on this topic?
So there are ways to borrow against your Bitcoin, but it's normally wrapped Bitcoin. You normally have to wrap it and then put it onto ETH. So if you go onto Aave, which is perhaps the biggest lending protocol right now, I'm just going onto it now. Yeah, so they have about 2 billion of wrapped ETH on there. So people are borrowing against that. So that is probably the biggest lending platform on ETH. So you could technically wrap your Bitcoin, put it onto ETH, and you can borrow. You can borrow against that at about 1%. So it's pretty good. I would say we can borrow at a 1% APY. So it's pretty low. This is DeFi borrowing has really gone down in terms of the yield that you can get. So yeah, you can get a pretty good borrow there at only 1%. That's much less. I mean, that's less than the risk-free rate for US Treasuries. I think. Oh, actually, no. Sorry. If you borrowed actual Bitcoin, if you were to borrow stable coins, it looks more like 7 to 9%. It looks like, depending on the stable coin, and you get an max LTV around 75%. So there are options. You probably have to pay about 7 to 9%. It looks like. You do get some yield on your Bitcoin. You get about 1% yield on your Bitcoin. So net is probably closer to 6 to 7. I think it's your choice. Aave, I think, has had small hacks before, but that's a decent amount of Bitcoin that's on there being supplied. That's 2 billion. This is one of the biggest platforms in DeFi. There are similar platforms in, let me have a look. The biggest one on Solana is Camino. I don't know if they have a wrapped Bitcoin, but I'll just have a look now. But yeah, there are options there. It's your choice. There are options to do it. You have to feel pretty confident about it. I think a lot of Bitcoin people are like, look, it's going in a cold wallet. I do not want to touch this thing. I believe Ledger has brought in, if you go into your Ledger app, you might be able to, I think they've introduced some lending against it, but it may not be as low in terms of the value there. So you might be able to do it natively through like Ledger Live. But yeah, there's no non-fiddly answer to this, is basically what I'm trying to say. There are options to do it, and people are doing it in the billions very clearly. But yeah, you have to have your hard hat on and appreciate there's going to be some risk with anything DeFi.
I love that. I'm waiting for the day when a big solid shop like a Fidelity or something that is also in the custody business, not necessarily Coinbase, but then you can just kind of have all your assets in one place, pair trade between them, borrow against them, do all that in a hassle-free manner. But I think err on the side of caution, everybody first. It's still a very immature space. There's lots of interesting things happening, like layer 2s on Bitcoin, for example, Zeus. I had big aspirations for their vision, but it's not quite fully baked yet, but it'll get there soon, I hope. And that'll be interesting to see what we can do there too.
You can't borrow against the ETFs, right? The Bitcoin ETFs.
Not yet, no.
Because that would be the solution. That would be great, because it's kind of clear. There's a lot of regulation around it. It's custody in a controlled way. At least the risk is perhaps slightly less. And it's a risk that you take anyway if you buy the ETF. Then it would be great to be able to borrow against that. And you basically never need to sell it. So exactly. I hope that will come at some point. That would be the solution I would love to see.
So the other big question that people have, and they want your perspective, this is kind of like a thought experiment around investment strategy. And we've seen, if you were investing in crypto 18 months ago, making a 10x, 20x, 50x was not beyond the realm of possibility if you picked the right assets. Big names like Solana went from $8 to over $200 in a very short window of time. But if it was a life or death situation, Mando, how would you turn $100,000 into $1 million in 12 months?
I mean, a 10x, I personally think that all the major assets, we've probably got a 2 to 3x in them. Because I've just said, look, I think Bitcoin dominance stays in the 50% range. I think Bitcoin probably tops out this cycle, let's say, although I don't think it's going to be as cycle-like as other cycles, tops out around 200K. So I think most things are a 2 to 3x. So I think it's going to be tough to have a 10x in 12 months. I would say you've got to probably go down the risk curve. And the issue about that is that altcoins and low cap coins have not really been your friend this cycle when you go down the risk curve. If you're like, all right, I'm going to buy a low cap altcoin gem, that they haven't had that same beta. If Bitcoin goes up 2 or 3x, altcoins have actually kind of gone sideways and then gone down 10 or 20%, over Bitcoin goes down 1%. So altcoins have not really been there. You kind of have to go into the meme coin sort of streets, I would say. So I would say, yeah, you could probably pick some of the major meme coins there. It's still difficult to imagine they do a 10x. Like Pepe's at 6 billion. I don't see that going to 60. Whiffs at 2 or 3. Tough 10x there. Interestingly, I don't know if you can bring this up. I've invested quite a lot in JLP, which is more DeFi-like, but it's got a little bit of spice to it.
I've got that too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that is earning about, that's basically... So let's say you own a bit of, So if you own a little bit of, so let's say your portfolio right now is you own some Sol, you own some Bitcoin, you own some ETH, and you own some stables. And you're like, I want to own everything, I own some stables. I think this is a pool of assets which is being used by Jupiter for its futures trading platform. And it's 45% Sol in the basket. It's 10% Bitcoin, 10% ETH, and 35% stables. And it earns around 80% APY at the moment. So technically, if you were to get let's say you do think that Bitcoin does a 3x, and then you get an 80% APY on the back of that over, let's say, the next, I wouldn't say 12 months, but you could maybe hit that 10x over 2 years. There's a world there where you could hit a 10x over 2 years with that sort of APY. So that's that's like a large bit of my spot and don't touch it portfolio at the moment. So that's maybe something to look into.
It's interesting. I've been in JLP for quite some time, and I consider that one of my money market accounts. So if there's a massive big splashdown, you can always liquidate and then put it into the market.
Look at it. Bring up the JLP chart. Like it's got one of the best Sharpe ratios in all of crypto because, and just to go into a little bit more, it basically earns on liquidations of people. So because it's their futures trading platform, so you never really have that bad drawdowns. But yeah, it's got DeFi risk. You cannot do a 10x without sitting there going like, right, I'm gonna have to take some form of risk, and you're putting your money into a relatively new DeFi futures product. So yeah, it's your call.
Yeah. Let me see if I can actually present it right now. Oh, share screen. Oh, window. I don't know where it is. It's not popping up. I know because I'm in Microsoft Edge, the only thing that works for me. Anyway, forget about that. Let's talk about Matt, CTO. Any creative ideas on $100K to $1 million for people? And people asking the questions. Why do I ask some stupid questions? Because these are the questions the community want to know. That's why.
I do have. I spent a lot of time studying it actually. So first of all, there is no guaranteed way to do it. And you can also not say that I need to make a 10x from this point onwards. While if studying the history, I think there's a very high chance that we will get more similar market environments where you will end up actually making 10x in 12 months. The type of pump markets that we've had in crypto so many times, I have no reason to suspect it won't continue. But then exactly when it comes, it's pretty difficult to predict. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing is that you can't do it if you're not ready to lose the money. Then that is a too ambitious target. The numbers isn't kind of correct. You can't do 10x with a high probability of success from this point forward. Then you have to lower the ambition. You have to aim at maybe 100% or 200% or 300%. So you take a more defensive strategy. So the number here is kind of important. If it was 10x instead, and you have a good job, you have a salary, money is coming in, and you feel like, I could lose those 10K because I can earn it again in a couple of months. You could go for a very risky strategy. And, with a little bit of luck, perhaps it actually goes 10x. And if it doesn't, okay, you could try again. If it's $1 million, you probably definitely don't want to do that strategy because it's already a lot of money. You probably don't want to lose it. Maybe better slow down, aim for a 2x instead, and do it several times instead. There are no get rich quick schemes, but there are actually a lot of get rich slow schemes if you're willing for that. Then 100K is somewhere in the middle. So you're willing to lose that or not depends very much on your life situation. If you do a kind of a high risk strategy, you step up leverage from spot to maybe 3x or something. Yeah, then probably you could do it. You go into altcoins, you buy uptrends when they start, you short the downtrends when they start. I mean, we will talk about it later. Like there's a lot of altcoins which are just a straight. If I can share the chart here, that's just a straight line down. It doesn't take that much. This is XRP to BTC, even though it pumped today. It's a straight line down. It doesn't take that much because there are some people that are so optimistic. I guess we'll talk about CRV later today, right? It looks like this. It doesn't, this is a 10x down in a straight line. There's no innovation here needed, guys. It's just to take the other position of some people that are religiously married to their altcoin, while actually there's nothing in this chart except the straight line down. So I do think it's possible, but it is a risky strategy. You could get liquidated any day and kind of lose the money. But I think if stepping down the ambition level a little bit, it is definitely possible, and it is possible to make 10x in 12 months if being willing to risk to lose it. But
and in fact, if people bought Bitcoin at the bottom at 15.5, and if Mando's correct with his 200K target, That's a 13x return on a massive asset. That's just completely bonkers to think. Even how mature it is, how big it is, and to be able to do a 13x. I hope you're right. That'd be very impressive. All right, we got to keep on plugging along. And thank you for those charts, CTO. Very scary charts. And the XRP army is strong. So, liquid staking, the next big question, because we're talking about money. Sometimes when things sound too good to be true, it's because they're very risky. However, liquid staking has been around for quite a bit of time. Now, there's a lot of liquid staking happening on things like Jito for Solana, so you can stake and then restake again and get extra return. What's your take on this? Mando, I'll give this to you first because I know you have some depth in this area. And the amount of liquid staking for Jito has just gone through the roof. I think they're over 11 million SOL right now, and they came from nothing a few months ago. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, look, in principle, I think it's okay. I think a lot of people do end up staking. I'm not as big a fan of the restaking move. I think that's for you personally. If too many people are staking with the same protocols, the main issue is you can end up with 51% attacks. I.e., let's say that staker was able to be somehow bribed. You could have a direct attack on the blockchain, and people have spoken about it with the ETH. Lido's share was a worry for a while, although it's gone down for a while. I believe Solana doesn't have that issue. But yeah, that being said, I think as with all of these things, there is going to be some sort of risk. And with staking, we haven't actually seen that risk rear its head. But for me, it's more like it's just unknown unknowns for me with this sort of stuff. Like once you don't have complete custody of the Solana or ETH that you have, or any of the other projects which you're staking, and you're giving it to a validator, then there is some element that you don't actually own that. You've just been given a liquid token which is basically claimed ownership of that token. So I would that's the only real worry about it for me, is that you don't actually have complete custody of your assets. In some could argue as well with the nature of the change in assets. Again, it's a tax event. So like if you swap your Solana and you give it to Jito, you actually get Jito SOL back. Similarly, if you give your ETH to Lido, you get Lido ETH back. And people have said that could be a taxable event. So it's also something to be aware of from that standpoint. So it's similar to the last thing. You got to appreciate that you don't have custody of your asset, and there could be something that happens in the future where that could be a worry.
Exactly. Allocations matter. What I always say, one of the most important things in investing is allocations, and think of a risk curve. If things are risky, you allocate less. It's real simple. CTO, what's your thought on liquid staking?
Yeah, I mean,
too good to be true.
You definitely add a risk, right? I don't really. The whole yield idea never really won me over in any way. The staking to get yield and so on. How many percent do you actually get? What is the yearly current rate? I haven't checked it lately.
I think you get the base staking plus a couple of percentage points on top of that.
Yeah, so it's kind of 6-7%, maybe something like
that. More. Like you can get 7.8% on staking Sol now.
Yeah, so say 7.8. That is then no catastrophe can happen in 12.8 years. If there is a catastrophe and suddenly you wake up one day and the money is gone because there was a hack or there was a failure or there was some fraud or whatever happened and the money, poof, is gone. Then if the risk of that happens is more than once every 13 years, then this is not a good risk reward. Then it's a negative risk reward. Then it's better just keep the money and not take the risk. And of course, it's a theoretical question. I don't know. No one knows the answer to it. But it's a mental model that I felt has helped me to not take some stupid decisions. Where there was like a very attractive yield. In the end, I didn't do it. And then like suddenly something actually happened. and I didn't take that risk. So I'm not sure. Is there? Is it 15% then? Okay, so then.
Well, I think part of the reason why people are staking even more and more is actually because all of these staking protocols also have their own token. So it's 7%, but then it's mystery airdrop amount, which is what people are getting it, right? So like with Jito, you got the Jito airdrop. With Lido, you get the Lido airdrop. And similarly, there could be restaking protocol airdrops. I believe like there's been partnerships between like staking and restaking protocols, which means that if you stake at the staking protocol, you could also get potentially the restaking protocol's airdrop. So that's why there's been this big push to it this cycle, because these airdrops of the staking and restaking protocols have started to go live. Jito, I think, has already gone live. I don't know if there's going to be a second season of it, but that's going to be the case for a lot of these. So that just makes it a bit more, you don't know. You could get something like 20% as really your risk. So I think that's a really good mental map of how to do it. But yeah, that's why I think it's slightly skewed at the moment.
I like that 13 years. Actually, it's a good way to frame up risk management for the audience. And I'm trying to figure out, I can't recall, but the typical cadence of a black swan is every 10 to 15 years. Mando, CTO, do you know? So it's kind of in that time frame.
Feels like that. Feels like that's about right.
All right. Next question that everybody wants to know. When it's time to take profits on altcoins, do you sell everything or leave some for the next bull run? And that's a kind of a double barrel question, because it also, you could construe, you hold on to Bitcoin forever, but you sell your altcoins, you sell your most speculative assets. CTO, what's your position on profit taking? And assume we do get an altcoin season, how do you determine how to pull out? Because when you did show that chart of the Bitcoin dominance, it tanked fast. Altcoin season in earnest lasted like 12 weeks, if I recall. All the juice happened in 12 weeks. So it's a short spike and you got to get in and out fast. Thoughts?
Yeah. It's a mental, you do need a process here. You cannot rely on your emotion. It happens too fast. It's too big numbers. It becomes completely impossible. And the reason that people find it so difficult is that, if you sell and then it pumps like 1000x afterwards, you feel almost dead inside. That's why, maybe I should only sell half and so on. But mathematically, there is a better way to do it. It is better to sell everything when you have concluded that it's time to get out. It's better to sell everything. And then if it turns out that you were wrong, it actually continued. What you interpreted as a downturn or a bearish event of some kind turned out to be a nothing burger. Price continues. Okay, then you have to buy back. That's the solution instead. It's statistically, that has been a much better approach than to sell 50% and hold on to the rest, because most altcoins, when it starts going badly, there is no bottom. They go down 90% and they go down 99% again. That's like, it doesn't make mathematical sense to hold on to half of it or something like that. It is, and to mitigate the problem you're getting, that what if it continues? Okay, well, then you buy back instead. That's a better mental and practical model for managing the altcoins.
Yeah, there is an interesting perspective as well for the audience, and that is the thought of let your winners run, let your winners ride. All in Pod say that all the time in their little jingle. This is so important as a little thought experiment here. There are some things that could run forever, and there are some things that will spike and fall back, mean revert. And how do you manage this? Oh, sorry, CTO, you a final thought?
Yeah, I forgot to say the second part of it, which was the most important, because there's a beginner mistake. So guys, if you're watching today, at least remember, take note of this one. Don't do this mistake. What most people do is that when something really works out, the altcoin goes up, Solana goes up, whatever it is, and it becomes starts feeling like it's an unreasonable big part of your portfolio. It started with 10%, but it went up a lot. So suddenly it's like 40%. Shouldn't you then sell some of it, take some of the profits, and rebalance your portfolio? Fund managers, they rebalance portfolios. And that's what many people do. It's a mistake, because what you do then is that you move money from the winner to the losers. And statistically, the one that is the winner is more likely to continue to win than that the losers suddenly start winning. This can be easily, studied in the history. So what you're doing then is that you're betting on a very unlikely event. It's better to keep the winner there. Don't rebalance that one into the losers. That's a mistake. It's instead that when the winner stops winning, when it tops out for some reason, trend turns down, there's a top button, bearish event, circumstances change, then you sell that one and you go out of that. Then you rebalance. But don't start rebalancing while you're winning. That's the maybe most common profit-taking beginner mistake.
Yeah, very, very true. Winner takes most as well. That's just the way of the universe, and it has always been, and it's no different in crypto. Mando.
Yeah, so I think what you've described and what this question is like slightly vague in that does it mean individual altcoins or does it mean like your altcoin portfolio? And I think what you've just said there really describes what you should do with individual altcoins for sure. Like you got to let your winners ride. You got to particularly cut ones which are not performed in any way versus Bitcoin for the last months, maybe even years. Like you got to really look at ones which have stronger narratives at certain times. You're not too late to get into those at this point in the cycle, in my opinion. That being said, in terms of my own plan for this, I plan to DCA out. So yeah, this is for me. I plan over a period of time, and after we hit a certain price target. So yeah, if once we break through 100K, I have an idea to DCA out of some over the next few months, and then successfully on that. But also it will mean that I consolidate as well more and more into the majors or something like JLP, for example, where I could feel I can own it fairly comfortably. So that's kind of my plan here. What I would say is that you'll never do it right. You can always have done it better each time in terms of taking profits. So and I think that's one of the toughest things mentally, and I know this from being a trader, is that often you anchor yourself to some sort of level of portfolio net worth or P&L, and the biggest error sometimes is to do that because you end up making more risk trying to get that back or feeling bad about yourself when actually you've done really well. Like some of you would have just held Bitcoin and Solana and ETH this cycle and done really well. So like give yourself a pat on the back. And if they go high, I think you also can too. But then you can also, if you get yourself caught up in, oh no, I sold Bitcoin at 100K and it's gone to 150 or 200K and I wish I'd held it all. And that could be the same with any of these altcoins. You're just going to beat yourself up and you can kind of FOMO back in or make bad decisions. So I think also having a plan for even if the price goes higher, you can be on the front foot for those sort of things.
That's so important. And GM Gaines has a very important note here too. Certainty versus probability. Stick with probability, optimize the probability, the DCA out, the layers, also critical. Let's jump ahead. We got about 10 minutes left. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. First of all, Mando is still here, I hope. But Pantera invests in Ton blockchain. A lot of people are talking about Ton, which is the open network, which is from Telegram, saying it is the new Solana. I did a detailed video on this yesterday. I don't believe it is, because a lot of what's required in a layer one is a lot of technology, a lot of capability, a lot of the ability to build dApps on. Yes, they can have Telegram-based games, and yes, they can have a ton of TVL, and yes, they have 900 million users. A lot of good stuff, but at the same time, is it a sol killer? I don't think so. Who wants to take this juicy one? And we'll go real fast. We'll try to keep this one to 2 or 3 minutes if you can.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll take the other side of this just to play devil's advocate here. I think it has probably one of the most unique onboarding stories in crypto so far. When you have 900 million users that can kind of start using it potentially without even knowing they're using it, it's quite a big deal. You know, they've already integrated Tether, so this could very quickly become the equivalent of Twitter payments. You know, they could do a Cash App style version here for Telegram where you're sending payments to each other natively on Telegram, on the Ton blockchain with Tether. And I think that's quite a big deal. And then they have the sort of interface of a mobile app where gaming is actually working. And gaming has not worked in crypto since, for years. None of these games have really worked out, but they've suddenly got this audience. There's a game called Hamster Combat on Telegram, which has a reported 150 million users. That is more than the number of crypto users in the US. That's what they're claiming. So that just tells you how quickly this sort of onboarding thing can happen when you have the right app. So it's not got the best tech. It's not got the best tokenomics, but it has got probably the strongest onboarding mechanism that I've seen in crypto so far. And I think we're going to have a real debate here about what is the most important, because Ton hit an all-time high last week. It was, in fact, probably the only L1 to be higher. It's now sitting around, I think, 30 billion. Yeah, but what's the FTV? It's somewhere between 30 to 40 billion right now.
Yeah, it's a monster.
It could happen. Like, it would not surprise me. To me, this feels more like Binance Coin. That's a better comparison than Solana, because I think it could really go after the Binance style users, which really went after, like, again, a very similar sort of quick onboarding mechanism. But I wouldn't downplay how big this coin could be.
I love what you said there regarding the onboarding. The ability to bring 900 million people into crypto by the flick of a switch is massive. That cannot be understated. And it's interesting that Pantera, their two big investments are Solana and Toncoin, which tells you something as well. But at this stage of the game, I tend to have very concentrated investments. I do not own Ton. I've been watching it. I regret not buying it at $1. I saw the value. I've been keeping my eye on it for a long time, but you can't catch them all. And don't ever beat yourselves up, everybody, if you worry about not catching them all. There'll always be an asset that goes faster. Any quick thoughts on this one, CTO?
Yeah, I can show the chart to complement. So the chart looks really strong still today. So it has obviously gone very well here. This is Ton to BTC, so we filter out the USD value. This is an ascending triangle here that kind of break out and retest. And also the Ton to USD chart obviously has been very strong and still is. It hasn't changed. And Ton now is bigger than Cardano, AVAX, twice as big as AVAX and Tron. And 19 billion market cap. BNB is 88, Solana 65, XRP 28. About the same size as Dogecoin.
It always makes me laugh when I see certain things in the top 10. It's like, why? Like, literally, they're the most overvalued names. I won't name which names, but if you know my channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I see Mando, you nodding your head there. It's ridiculous. Because people get married to stuff and they can't let go. They hold on to XRP for 5 years, or they're in a staking pool for some other token X, and they can't let go, and they believe the pumpers. Mando, any quick advice for the audience on that topic, which is near and dear to my heart, people getting sucked into stuff and not letting go?
Yeah, that's 100%. I think we've been flagging Ton since I kind of went on this show, right? It was slowly creeping up, and I said, if you're going to own something that isn't Solana and seeing adoption, this is one. And I think we mentioned all the coins in that top 20, which were still there, and they're not really seeing users, particularly L1s, right? Like Cardano, like what's it still doing there? XRP, Polkadot, I don't know where that is now, but we're talking about coins which they just do not have a stronger story this cycle. And I think you gotta hold on to gotta keep on to your winners. Like I said, like this is a coin where you got to respect that. I think it's going to be it's going on a pretty strong run, and I feel like other than tokenomics, and maybe it's not the fastest chain, it's still got a very strong story about it. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Adoption is massive. Okay, we're going to run real fast now. Got a couple more topics to nail. Is Curve liquidation and another sign that DeFi is dying? Now, Curve has had issues for as long as I can remember, 5 years plus, but there are some problems with this liquidation, and the value plummets almost 40%. This is part of what we were talking about earlier. Risk, return, don't go all in on things that maybe have a big juicy premium or a JLP that has an 80% return, because there's always risk in DeFi. Mando, you brought this topic up as something near and dear to your heart. Any quick thoughts to share with the audience here? And then CTO, you can show the chart of how bad Curve has been for a long time.
It's just a hilarious story. So to get some background, the Curve founder took out about $100 million of loans and bought 2 mansions with it in Australia, and then subsequently got liquidated on those loans for his Curve token. I think what it really just shows is more, maybe not that DeFi's dead. I think stablecoins and staking are all still very much alive, but DeFi governance coins, you know, we had that shot, Uniswap had that shot to turn on the fee switch and go after the SEC about this, and they got the tap on the shoulder and said, don't do it. DeFi governance coins are horrific investments.
I always said DAOs are crap. Stay away from DAOs. But there are maybe a couple of exceptions where they are okay. Like I do, in full disclosure, own Jupiter. And that could be argued is a DAO as well. But I own Jupiter because of the same story of Ton. It's like adoption. And it's also because I dog food it every day. I love using it. CTO, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, here is CRV to BTC chart. Up here is 4,000. Down here is 400. And it's a straight line in a clear downtrend, down 90%. And yeah, you have to be really, really loving something if you're not the founder and you're just holding in a downtrend, 90% down, when there is nothing. Why would you do that? Why would someone do that? And I don't know, if you've taken a loan against it and you're sitting looking at this one and it's like literally a straight line down here, you can almost predict which day you're going to get liquidated. If you draw this a little bit more carefully here, like this, it's a perfect line. So you can calculate it that, here on this day, 13th of June, I'm going to get liquidated, and you will get it exactly right. And I don't know why do people do that? What happened then? Do you know, Monday, what happens with his mansions? Has he kind of already cashed out?
Kept them. So obviously, he just got liquidated on the token, so he didn't really mind. He took out $100 million. He did repay some of it, but yeah, he's still got his houses. He's done well out of this whole situation.
It's magic internet money. Okay, gaming. Gaming is something I don't know about. Never played games. Never had time. But crypto gaming could be a massive adoption angle, and this ties into Toncoin too. CTO, any quick thoughts on blockchain gaming? Could 2024 be the year where we get a breakthrough game? We heard about the other game with, 30 million users, Mando mentioned earlier?
150. I say. I mean, it's difficult to say with these games, but yeah.
It hasn't really happened from the mainstream game houses. It has not, which is a little bit surprising. I'm not sure why. If they are scared, they've been scared of the SEC, so they don't really dare to do it. Or what's the reason? It's like it's Telegram and a bunch of crypto projects that are trying to build games. But what about the actual gaming houses with 500 employees building games for a living? Why are there not more cryptocurrencies in those? I don't know. Anyone knows? What's your thoughts?
Look, there's been some proper games. You go look at some of the games now. Star Atlas is about to launch on Solana, and that's a proper AAA game. I think, again, part of this is tokenomics. Part of this was the big investment cycle of 2023, 2022 was for VCs to invest in these coins. And a lot of them are the classic high FDV, low float coins, and they have been eviscerated. You go on to top gaming coins over the last month, they have all been absolutely destroyed. All of them are down 40% roughly. Like, it's been a really, really bad period for them. So I think it's partly how the tokenomics are done. I do think
all money grabs. All money grabs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the only way these games can really work. Like, they need to take in money to make the game, and then they get these horrific tokenomics which repay investors, and the game all collapses when the game comes out because the tokenomics don't work and all this sort of stuff. I just don't know. I don't know. But I do think that, maybe Telegram, these sort of mini games might be the way that it gets successful first, but we just haven't seen it work.
And then the adoption of those mini games tends to be very flighting. It only lasts for a week or a couple of weeks or whatever. Kind of like some meme coins too. Okay, penultimate question. Well, there's actually 3 very quick questions. A lot of talk now about AI. Okay, we've got 2 huge S-curves happening at the same time. We got crypto and crypto adoption, which are going through a little bit of a summer slump. But it'll be back on the train in no time. But AI and robotics, people believe that's going to be a massive, massive revolution. From now through 2030, which revolution do you think will yield more return? This is what I grapple with all the time.
I was reading about the Tesla bull case over the weekend.
30 trillion.
About 30 trillion. You know, this is what Elon said when he got paid his 55 billion pay package. He said he's going to take it to 30 trillion. And people saying the robotics market could be in the hundreds of trillions, even in the quadrillions over the next decade.
Think global GDP. So robots replaces people's salaries. That's how big the market is. It's monstrous. But Mando,
you did get me very bullish on Tesla and robotics in general. I do one of these things is that I imagine they all complement each other, and I imagine they can all be absolutely huge trades over the next decade. Yeah. Part of me thinks that robotics might be the one after having read that thing over the weekend. It did get me very, very pulled up.
I mean, what is clear right now, if looking at those 3, there's 2 that's hyped right now and 1 which is not. So that from an investment perspective, robotics like Tesla is not really hyped now. Everyone is buying Nvidia, and crypto has obviously done very well this year, and it gets a lot of attention. No, I don't see people talking so much about the robotics opportunity. So that could be an opportunity. But what my take on this is that it's actually kind of the wrong question. They are all great opportunities. And I don't think the objective here is to pick one. I've thought a lot about this. Like, should you bet on one of these, only the one you think is best? But I've come to the conclusion that the diversification here is really your friend. And it's an advantage that there are multiple sectors that are not as correlated as 2 different altcoins or Bitcoin and another altcoins. They are still correlated, but less correlated. So that's our friend. Our friend here is really the fact that we have multiple opportunities. AI, no one has missed the Nvidia bull run. I don't know if I can show the chart again here.
Oh yeah, it's nuts.
And it's nuts. It's, you know, okay, perhaps you cannot do 10x in a year here, but you could absolutely do, if we go back 10 years, this is then 34,000%. So that's 341x.
And by the way, Nvidia is one of the few assets that's outperformed Bitcoin over the last decade. Think about that. People say nothing beats Bitcoin. Well, AI does. So,
exactly. And I think there's no need to say, okay, which one of these is going to be the best. I think it's fine as long as they're both good, great then. And, you know, then we've reduced risk a little bit if we can find 2 great assets instead of just one. And same for robotics opportunity. I think that one is maybe the one that is the kind of an opportunity. Nvidia has run up a lot now. The entries from a tier perspective were earlier. It's kind of now it's run. It's like hard to say that should you buy it now. That's quite risky. But Tesla is at support, for example. You know, could be an opportunity.
That's interesting. Tesla is a no-brainer, and it's easier to explain than Bitcoin. Very good. Very good. Okay, so the answer to that one is own both. It's like a little meme of little girl, why not both type of thing. And that's exactly what belongs here. You need to be positioned in both these categories. I strongly believe in that. Final hit of, actually, we've got one more, but I don't know if we're going to be able to have time to hit it. Depends. This one is fun question. Let's do this in 10 seconds or less. Somebody just came across $100,000 in dry powder. How would you allocate it for the rest of the bull run? Not financial advice, of course.
It depends on what sort of risk you're going to take, but I'll tell you how my portfolio is set up. Is this JLP, which makes up a lot of my spot, so I can just rest easy, and then I own Pepe because I think that's the best alt for me this cycle. But people could think I'm an idiot for that, but I think that doesn't make me FOMO at any point during the market. It normally does okay.
So you're JLP and Pepe, like 80%.
That is a lot of my crypto portfolio. Yeah,
that's DGen, 100%. CTO, 100K.
If I personally found 100K on the street and I don't need it, I just found it, I can't think of anything to use it for really, then I would go in, buy some new altcoins, absolutely, and take some risk with that. Perhaps lose it all, but perhaps could pick one that does well over the next period. If that's me specifically and I found 100K. But I'm saying that I already have Bitcoin exposure, for example, and I don't really need it. So I don't need the money. So then I would take some fun risk with that. Worst case, I learn something. That's what
awesome. Always be learning. Very important. Very final question. And then that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you both, Mando and CTO, for being here. How many rate cuts are we getting this year? I say 2. The market says at least 1. We are now over 2/3 chance of a cut in September, which will be 2 months ahead of the US election. CTO, how many this year?
I cheated also, if I can share the screen. So here are the market probabilities. Having shown this, actually, the market has been really wrong about this over the past 2 years. So that's the interesting thing. The market thinks 2, 1 in September and 1 in December. I do think rate cuts will start coming soon, and I guess on 3 then. Election year, they want to pump everything, so I guess on 3.
3, nice. Mando.
3 would be wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I'll go with 3 too. Why not? I think inflation is going right down.
So I got 2, and yeah, what's crazy is, people say, it's like I couldn't understand how the Fed is absolutely blowing up US deficits. They're printing more money to pay interest on debt. The interest on debt now is twice the military budget of the United States. It is absolutely insane. The whole thing is just a house of cards. And the fact that they're playing about this miraculous unicorn 2% inflation, and they're cooking the books even on that, and they can't get it below 3.1%. They removed coffee, something very near and dear to my heart, from the CPI numbers. It's all crap. So, there's government statistics, and then there's just pure lies. I think government statistics are worse than pure lies. My very unfiltered thought. Any final thoughts, guys? That's a wrap.
Yeah, that's a wrap. I think crypto is going to trump at some stage. The US fiat system just seems in a whole lot of pain when you think about those sort of numbers. 2x the defense, and put in mind that the US spends more than defense than pretty much everyone else in the world combined. That tells you how big this interest rate payments are. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's the whole show is absolutely bonkers. Thank you as well, CTO. Any final words from you before next week? And I think, Mando, you're moderating next week.
I'm moderating, yeah.
Yep.
It's great. Just keep at it, guys. Now, when there's a down day, don't quit and log out, because sometimes the entry opportunities, they don't come when there's a straight line up.
Yep.
I'm hoping we get a dip to some support, finding strength. We could get new entry opportunities, perhaps. So I'm pretty excited when things are shaking up a little bit.
And that 65, 66, 67K level is very solid support, at least from short-term holder realized cost basis, etc. But the miners are capitulating hard now. So if they take all their bags and dump them all at once, we could break that 65K. That's my final thought. Not so bullish for next week, but Saylor's going to be buying. He's already issuing stock. I saw it on the chart earlier today. He'll be buying this week. He takes that cash in. He sells those shares. He turns it into cash within 24 hours and buys Bitcoin. I've never seen such fast transaction capability. That's the only positive note that I see for the next week. Mando, you watching that one?
Oh yeah, 700 million. That'll be hopefully nice.
Yeah, it's more than our 100,000 that we found on the street in Stockholm. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you as well to the mods in the chat and everybody else. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.